You've been probably thinking about starting yoga at home for a while now, and something about it keeps calling you back. But every time you try to actually begin, you hit a wall. You're not sure which style is right for your body, you're overwhelmed by the amount of videos and routines, and you're wondering if you even need to be flexible to do this properly. In essence, you're asking yourself, can I actually start yoga at home, from scratch, with no experience and have it actually work for me? That's exactly the right question, and this video is the complete answer. So let's work this out, Queen. Before anything else, let's get clear on what yoga actually is. Yoga is a practice that combines physical postures, breath, and body awareness. It's been around for thousands of years, and the physical part, which is the part you do on a mat, is called asana. That's the foundation of everything we'll cover today. But to move through this video with clarity, there are a few key terms worth knowing. Asana is a yoga pose or posture. Every shape you hold on the mat is an asana. Pranayama means breath control. In yoga, the breath isn't just something that happens in the background. It's active, intentional, and directly connected to every movement you make. Vinyasa. This word has two meanings. It refers to a style of yoga, but it also describes the act of linking movement to breath. Inhale into one shape, exhale into the next. Savasana is the final resting pose at the end of every practice. You lie completely still and let your body absorb what you've just done. It looks like doing nothing, but it's actually one of the most important parts of the practice. A modification is an adapted version of a pose that meets your body where it is. They are not a lesser version of yoga, but an adaptation to your body. Understanding these 5 terms means you'll never feel lost in a class or a video again, so you already speak enough of the language to begin. Before your first practice, there are a few things worth sorting out, because the right setup makes consistency much easier. First, your space. You don't need a dedicated yoga room. You just need a space the size of your mat, enough to extend your arms overhead and to both sides without hitting anything. A corner of your bedroom, the space between the sofa and the coffee table, or a spot in the garden work. What matters is that the space feels calm and free of clutter. Your equipment. The only true essential is a yoga mat, since it gives your hands and feet grip, cushions your joints, and defines your personal space. A mid-range mat is more than enough to start, so avoid very thick exercise mats, as you want to feel the floor beneath your feet for balance. A few optional props that make practice easier are blocks, which bridge the gap between your hands and the floor, a strap or belt, which extends your reach in seated stretches, and a blanket for knee cushioning or warmth during the final rest. But remember, you do not need to buy anything before you begin. You can start with what you have. Your goal before you press play on your first video should be to know what you're coming to yoga for. Flexibility, stress relief, strength, or better sleep are all valid. What matters is that you know your reason. Because on the days when motivation is low, your reason is what keeps you showing up. Now, just like every strength training program is built around a few foundational movement patterns, yoga is built around a small set of fundamental poses. These appear in almost every class and across every style. Learn these, and you'll feel at home in any beginner practice. The downward-facing dog is probably the most recognized yoga pose. You start on all fours, tuck your toes, and lift your hips up and back to form an inverted V shape. Heels reach toward the floor, hands press firmly into the mat. It stretches the hamstrings, calves, and spine simultaneously and builds strength in the shoulders and arms. Child's pose. Knees wide, hips back toward the heels, forehead resting on the mat, arms extended forward or alongside the body. This is your resting pose, and anytime a practice feels like too much, you come here. In Warrior 1, you put one foot forward, the back foot turns out, hips face forward, and arms reach overhead. This pose builds strength in the legs and opens the chest. It asks you to feel grounded and tall at the same time, and that combination is something you'll come back to again and again in yoga. Warrior 2. The hips open to the side, arms extend parallel to the floor, and the gaze is calm over the front hand. This pose builds lower body endurance and trains focus. It's simple and powerful. In seated forward fold, the legs are extended and hinge forward from the hips. The goal is not to touch your toes, but to feel a lengthening through the back of the legs and the spine. These 5 poses form the foundation of your practice, and every other shape you encounter as a beginner will feel more familiar once you know these well. Building a yoga routine should include these 5 poses, but you should remember that it is more complex than choosing a video and pressing play. A complete practice has usually 3 parts. The warm-up aims to transition your body to movement. Start with gentle breath awareness, slow neck rolls, cat-cow movements on all fours, and easy hip circles. These are not optional, since cold muscles and joints are more vulnerable, and a short warm-up sets the tone for everything that follows. In the main practice is where you work through your asanas. For beginners, a simple session might look like this: downward dog, child's pose, warrior 1 and 2 on both sides, a seated forward fold, and a gentle twist. Move at a pace where you can breathe comfortably throughout. Then every session ends with a cool down and savasana. This is where your nervous system integrates the practice, so women who skip savasana are leaving the most restorative part of yoga behind, so stay on the mat. You'll appreciate it. Now, progressing in yoga is different from progressing in most other forms of movement. You won't measure it in kilos or kilometers. You'll measure it in awareness, in how much more comfortable you feel in a pose, how much steadier your breath is, and how naturally your body begins to find alignment. It is more a sensation rather than a muscular feeling. The simplest way to progress is to stay longer. So if you've been holding a pose for 3 breaths, hold it for 5. If you've been practicing 10 minutes, build to 15. Then, as you become more familiar with the foundational poses, you can begin to explore variations. A standard warrior 2 becomes a reverse warrior, and a seated forward fold becomes a wide-legged forward fold. Probably, progress will feel fast in the beginning, and then it will slow down, but this is completely normal for women starting any movement practice. But if you manage to stay consistent, here is what yoga does, both physically and mentally. First, it improves flexibility in ways that carry over into everyday life, like bending down, sitting comfortably, sleeping without tension. It also builds a quiet kind of strength, especially in the core, the hips, and the stabilizing muscles around the joints. And it also actively calms your nervous system, since the breath-based movement in yoga stimulates what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of your body responsible for rest, digestion, and recovery. Now, you know what yoga is, which style to start with, what you actually need, and how to build a practice that sticks. The only thing left is to begin, so if this video gave you what you needed, subscribe, because every week we cover yoga, fitness, and sustainable habits for women right here.